Hi, welcome. This is my book review of 2024, and yeah, this is my first video on YouTube. Sorry if the camera quality is not the greatest, or the lighting, or the mic. Um, I have this little guy for my lighting. Oh my god, it's a duck. That's it. I picked out 6 books. I did not read a lot in 2024, although I really like reading. It's hard for me to finish a book because I'm kind of a slow reader. But yeah, so I picked out 6, and I have them right here. Number 6. Pretty underground. I don't think a lot of people know about this. It's called Harry Potter. Yeah, it's just amazing. I'm sure a lot of people have read this book, watched the movies. You already know what it's about. But this specific version, and I got the 2 other ones as well, all 3, is designed and illustrated by Minalima. I think that's how you say it. And the book consists of a lot of very, very pretty art. Like every page is illustrated and has very cool, let me find a good one. Very cool interactive pages. It literally makes the book come to life. It is so cool. And this is actually my only copies of Harry Potter, because I thought it'd be amazing to have all, I think 8 or 7 of them on a shelf, because they're just so pretty. They're so cool. And I read them kind of last year. I read the second one last year, but I'm just grouping them both. You already know what it's about. And then my 5th book is, I gotta stop doing that, The Prophet. I don't think it's gonna focus. By Kahil Gibran. I probably pronounced that terribly, sorry. It is a very old poetry book. I think maybe a century old. I have no idea. There's a foreword by Ruby Carr. I am more familiar with her. I really like Homebody by her. And she just says how much this is her favorite book, I'm pretty sure. Don't quote me. And it's probably the best, I don't know if I said this already, probably the best poetry book I have ever read. I do like poetry. It is about this guy who lives in this village on the coast, I believe. I read this a while ago, like very early 2024. So forgive me if I get some points wrong, but the general premise is he lives in this small village, and he is very close with everyone. Everyone kind of knows each other. And he wants to travel or go somewhere new for work. I can't remember. But like the day before he leaves, they have this gathering in town, and a lot of different people, old people, kids, neighbors, friends, enemies, all ask him for advice. And the chapters are literally titled like On Pain, On Beauty, On Pleasure. And you can just skip to that chapter if you really wanted to. And they just gives like the best advice like ever on those certain subjects in a very like old-timey way, kind of. Like I said, it's a pretty old book written in a kind of old language. But after you get through kind of that barrier, it's so helpful, and I would make everyone read this once before they die if I could. And everyone should read it. And then my 4th favorite, Lightbringer by Pierce Brown, which is the 6th book in the Red Rising saga. And what a book. I kind of read this pretty fast right after the 5th book, Dark Age, which is the 2nd longest book I've ever read. I think it's around 700 or 800 pages. And so I'm kind of mixed both of them together. and it's kind of hard to talk about a sixth book in a saga without spoiling the rest. But I'll try. It's kind of split up into two different trilogies. The first trilogy, which is Red Rising, Golden Sun, and Morning Star, and people say you can stop there, but I wouldn't recommend it because there's 3 other books: Iron Gold, Dark Age, and Lightbringer. And he's coming out with the last book, people say this year, and I really hope so. It's called Red God. It's very cool. It's set in a very, very big sci-fi / fantasy, mostly sci-fi universe, and you follow this main character called Darrow. And the second part of the series, like including Lightbringer, is a lot more political intrigue, a lot more consequences, a lot bigger war, a lot bigger battles. A lot of stuff happens in the last book, and I would just recommend getting into it. I can probably make a whole nother video just on the Red Rising series, and I might just do that. We'll see. But yeah, that's Lightbringer. Oh, and actually I have this beautiful copy of Lightbringer from Juniper Books. It is so cool. This is part of, it's supposed to be the other 2 right here, Dark Age and Iron Gold. I just have them on my shelf downstairs. Very, very pretty. And when I read them, when Red God gets announced, I want to reread them all. And I'm gonna reread these ones. It is the centerpiece of my shelf downstairs, and it's just so cool. It's so cool. And then my third favorite book, Call Me By Your Name. I'm sure a lot of you have at least heard about this. I'm sure most of you know about the movie. It is a beautiful book. A lot better than, if you like the movie, check out the book, please. I think it's a lot better than the movie. I read this before the movie, so that might sway my opinion, I guess. You know how everyone reads books and they're like, oh, the book was better. The book is better, although I love the movie. I love the director, Luca. I love all of his work. But this is it is basically poetry without being poetry. I've never had a book quite transport me in a different place as much as this one did. It's set in Italy. In kind of a grand house the main character lives in because his family's kind of wealthy. His dad's some sort of a professor. I forget what specifically, but and it's a young man, and he starts hanging out and falling in love with this American who is in college, and he starts studying abroad there with his family and starts staying there, studying with his dad, and it is just so good. If you like the movie, please check out the book. It's probably one of the best love stories ever. And then number 2, the longest book I have ever read. This book, instead of reading this, you could finish the entire Lord of the Rings series, I'm pretty sure. Both around 1,000 pages each. And this is The Way of Kings. I'm sure a lot of you have also heard about this book. And know the name Brandon Sanderson. He's getting a lot of recognition lately, especially of Book Talk and all of that. Very, very big fantasy writer, probably the biggest currently. And it follows, he has almost all of his books are connected in the same universe, called the Cosmere universe, I'm pretty sure. And this is my first of his. This is the start of the Stormlight Archive. I believe there's 5 books in this. I know it's kind of a weird starting point because a lot of people say to start with Mistborn, but I just finished Lightbringer when like early 2024, and I really wanted to get into another big series. I don't know why, but I just was in the mood of reading another like big world building book. So I started with Way of Kings, and I absolutely love it. It's rated that high because it is that good. It's very hard to find flaws. It is like a pretty big book. I would say very few chapters drag though. You follow three different perspectives: Kaladin, Shallan, and Dalinar. Three different people. Although the main character is mostly Kaladin, which is everyone's favorite and my favorite. Um, but all three different perspectives is set around this world, very different places, very different stories, and slowly they all start connecting more and more towards the book ending. And it's just hard to talk about a book without spoiling it. I want to spoil so bad, but read The Way of Kings. Just read it. If you like fantasy, if you like world building, everyone's going to tell you to start with Brandon Sanderson, and I am too, because it's just that good. And my number one book of 2024 and of all time, I think it's hard for me to pick favorites in anything, but I will say this is a great contender for my number one favorite book. Piranesi. Although I think it's pronounced Piranesi, like actually, but everyone just says Piranesi, and I will. By Susanna Clarke. This is basically her second book. Her first book is, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. Some of you might have heard of it. It's a pretty big fantasy book set in England with old magic. She wrote that, I think, a decade or two ago. And as far as I know, it's a pretty good book. I have it. I just haven't read it yet. But I saw this on the shelf, didn't know anything about it, and wanted to start it. And I'm so glad I did. It is a short book. I think it's around 200 pages. Piranesi is about a guy who is living in a labyrinth type place, and that is all he knows. There's no one else there. Every room is basically just a big hallway filled with very interesting statues. It's kind of like, it kind of reminds me a lot of Atlantis. And I think a lot of people speculate that is actually where he's from, but no one really knows. And there is actually one other person living there with him, and he is called the Other. That is what Piranesi calls him, and he calls the main character Piranesi, and he doesn't know why, but he just sticks with it. And he's a very innocent man. And the book is written through journal entries that Piranesi makes. He writes down everything he knows, everything he experiences, and I think it's such an interesting and very cool way to read a book. It also makes the pages shorter. And it's just written so beautifully. You fall in love with the character, you fall in love with the house, which is what Piranesi calls it, the place that he's in, and I would describe this mostly as a mystery book / fantasy. Just read it. It's so good. It's so good. I've never met someone or heard someone talk about it online and say anything bad about it. It is just such a good book. And Leica Studios, the people who made Coraline, is actually going to adapt it. I'm like 99% sure. I'm not sure when. It's probably going to be a couple years, but it's like, if you've read the book, it is, you know, it's the perfect like people to adapt it. It's gonna be so good. It's so amazing. Please read it. And yeah, that is it for my book review. Let me know in the comments if you want more book related content. If you have recommendations for books, I am reading a couple books right now. I like to read multiple books at once. Maybe I'll do TBR type of video. We'll see. I do want to play games, and I would love to play games on YouTube. I love YouTubers like Smitty, Moist Critical, for like video games commentary, and I think mine would kind of be similar to theirs. Booktubers though, I really like To To Ramble. You might know them. I'd say they're fairly popular, but not nearly as popular as other people. I really align a lot of my like interest in books with them. Definitely check them out. Way more professional, way better equipment. And I get a lot of inspiration from those guys. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for more. And yeah, that's it. Bye. See ya.